thought I'd make a video about this piece of music since it's quite a good example of a lot of kind of little harmonic moves that can be done, things that can happen, and show maybe how you can, if you're trying to get more of an understanding of how something's constructed, you can abstract away details until you have something that's a little bit clearer. It can be sometimes a useful way to think. So I'll put a link to the original in the description, or I should say the one I was listening to work it out. And I think that's in B flat if I remember right, but I moved it to D just because it seems to fit okay on the guitar, for me at least. So yeah, let's get into it. I'll just play through it and maybe say what the chords are basically. Chord 1, D major, so we're in the key of D. D again. 1 dominant, so D7, which goes very often pulls to chord 4, in this case, which is G, because you have this in the chord. That gravity's propelling you forward. We're holding on to the same note in the bass, so we've got now our, is G over D, or G in second inversion, or G with the fifth in the bass. Now, this thing kind of feels like a 5-to-1 in a way, because you have this in the chord, which is very reminiscent of A7 to D, like this. We also have a note there which is borrowed from D minor, if you want to think of it this way. Which gives a bit of extra tension, a bit of momentary darkness, which comes back, and it's still being held over our D pedal tone there. Still being held over that. When we come into the singing, we have D major, chord 1, B minor, chord 6 minor, D major with the fifth in the bass, so chord 1 again, chord 5, dominant 7, which you expect to hear go to D, but instead you kind of switched out, so you're in this B minor, E minor in first inversion, which is chord 2 of D, chord 5, A major, with the melody filling in the gap. I feel that's quite important for the melody here. And you're back home. Then we have which is, you could say it's kind of like D augmented, as in a D major triad, but the fifth up 1 fret, that's what's meant by augmented. But for me, I guess I relate it a little bit to this, which is a 5-1 of the relative minor, because this note is the note which has been sharpened in our key here. You know, we were in D. As soon as you hear that note, it kind of makes it want to pull to this note, which is B, so like a B minor chord. So it's not dissimilar to this for me. So it kind of has made it seem like our relative minor's home now. Relative minor of D being B. Now this sounds very different to me. This chord is a C sharp 7 with this note is carried over from the last chord. You could call it suspension. And you feel a colour shift there very distinctly, especially when it goes to here. This is very, so we're somewhere else for a minute really. Chord 2, dominant 7 of B minor. Chord 5, dominant 7 of B minor. So when you hear, it kind of feels like somewhere else, and then when it comes back to this, it feels like we're getting ready to be back in B minor really. So melodically. So you can feel, it's a good thing to do to try and, I think, if you have an interesting sound, just, you know, as chords like this, just try and see how you might improvise over it to explore the sound. It's usually quite, I find it very hard at first on a new, you know, new sound, but once you get it into your ears, then it becomes more natural. You hear that very distinct chromatic thing happening there. To regular B minor. It's like 5-1 of A, E7 with a 5th in the bass, A in first inversion. Think of it as the 5, so B7, so think of it as the 5 of E, if you like. 5 of A is a dominant 7. And you end up feeling like A is home after all that, because you preceded it with its own dominant chord, which makes things tend to feel a bit more like they're at home, even if we're only visiting it temporarily. So there's quite a few changes there if you were to try and, you know, try to outline some of these chords. It can be a good kind of exercise or something. Let's see. And I think if you're improvising, I like to think of if there's a melody in there, like this is such a strong melody, I like to start with that, or and then you can get your ear in the zone in the game. It kind of gives you a little bit of a prompt. And when things move in fifths, you can see, usually if you have a family of notes, family of pitches, you're just shifting one by, if you're moving up a fifth, you're sharpening something, and if you're moving down a fifth or up a fourth, you're lowering something. And a lot of traditional harmonic shifts tend to be that way. So this is D. And then if you wanted to go to A, it's just one note difference. This moved here, and just try and follow your ear. I don't know. I find it very hard, but if you can, it's satisfying if it works. Anyway, so. We're going to go back to feeling like D's home. its own 5 dominant. Another pedal tone thing happening here, so your D has the 5th in the bass, and it just creates kind of a mood like we're floating or something. And then same thing's going to happen where we swapped the D for a B minor. It's a relative minor. It's a change. This part's very intense. Chord 5 of D, chord 3 of D, which very often would feel like a 5 chord of the relative minor if we went like this. But we don't, which is a bit unexpected for me. We go to E minor, which you could say is chord 2 of D, and with this really nice melodic move on top that it happens. To E minor in first inversion. So E minor with the root in the bass, E minor with the minor third in the bass, and this 9 thing on top, whatever. It's kind of like E minor add 9. I love that chord a lot. That's one of the highlights for me. And then approaching A with a diminished chord. It's kind of like a 5 chord, its own 5 chord in first inversion with a flat 9. It's not a million miles away from going, but just a little bit darker, I guess. Which is, if we're, there's a lot happening movement there. That whole section. Back home. And you finish back at home. So you've got this thing of being at home and establishing that, and then visiting some other places, and then ending up where you started. So I think it's kind of a good example, and you know, this stuff's always challenging. But you can look at something and you can try and understand the framework and the way it's constructed, and you know, it can help if you're interested in these kind of things. I find it kind of fun. You might hear some cool sounds in there or something like that, get a pleasant sensation out of it or something. If you enjoy it, then that's good. But if you're still here, thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.